Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. Today we begin by talking about canola. And like wheat, the weather this spring has certainly presented its share of challenges for producers. SUNUP's Austin Moore takes us to a canola field near El Reno.
Josh, we've really seen some maturity problems this year in the crop as far as figuring out when to get it out of the field.
Yes, for a year that's been a constant struggle with no moisture. We finally get some right here at the end. Unfortunately, some of those stress crops that were really needing a drink of water, being an annual plant is going to put on whatever it could. With these late rains right at harvest, canola being an indeterminate crop is going to try to reflower and set new pods with that new moisture it just got, because it knew it can do a lot better than what it did. So for guys that were able to have a crop that's far enough along to get it laid down into a windrow or terminate it with a desiccant, prepare the crop in some way before those rains, probably fared a little bit better than those guys that waited. Some of the guys, we weren't quite there to terminate the crop either with the swather or desiccant, and we decided to wait to see what those storms provided. We got quite a bit of rain last week or two, and now these crops that were really stressed are starting to regrow. And so if they still have a crop out there standing, they're trying to determine what to do with it. You really have to determine where your yield is. That first crop before those rains, if that was your major crop and still is, I would go after that crop, even though some of these later pods from these rains might add a little bit of yield. If you wait on those, these bigger pods that we first set are probably going to shatter out. So that's the situation a lot of producers are in right now, is how long can we wait? Obviously, like this field, for instance, we waited as long as we could to swath it. You can tell we lost a few when we swathed it, so some did shatter at swathing, but for the most part, he's able to retain most of that into the windrow without much shatter loss. Some guys that are really had a lot of regrowth issues, probably the best scenario would be to terminate with the desiccant. Reglone, by Syngenta, Diquat is the only really labeled desiccant we have for winter canola in Oklahoma. That works great. Use the full rate. Make sure you get good coverage. If you just get enough spray coverage to get on top pods, those are the ones that are going to die. You really need that Diquat, that herbicide, to get down here deep into the canopy to get a good dry down of the crop. As you notice, usually we don't have that many leaves this time of year.
Right.
Since we didn't, and some of our stands weren't the thickest. Typically, if we have a thick stand, once we have this pod set, we start dropping those leaves, and the pods do the remainder of the photosynthesizing.
Okay.
If we have a thinner stand, the sunlight's getting down lower in the canopy, the crop's going to retain those green leaves, and with this late moisture with those leaves, it's wanting to grow again. So getting that Diquat as much of the pod canopy as you can, and even some of those bottom leaves to really terminate that crop to where you can get in on a timely fashion. With the Diquat, it's probably going to be a little bit more expensive than a custom swathing application, so you do have to pencil it out, see if it works for you. Some guys that are starting to straight cut, this regrowth is a huge issue if we're trying to direct harvest it, straight cut it with the combine, because that stuff we're going after is ripe, but these flowers, these green pods, these green leaves, when it gets chewed up in the combine, it spikes that moisture.
Gotcha.
Guys cannot deliver canola grain above 10% moisture. They will reject you at the elevator. So trying to figure out how to get that seed without chewing up that much green material, opening your concaves, slowing your cylinder down, slowing your rotor down to try to prevent chewing up all these leaves and all these green stems if your seed is ready. Sometimes we have an issue if we have a lot of biomass out here and not a lot of pods in some areas of the state. We didn't get very good like we talked about before, didn't get very good pod set. So we got a lot of biomass, not a lot of seed, and sometimes that's issues trying to get it separated on the shoe. Get those sieves set correctly, get your air ratio set to where you're getting enough to separate the material, but not blowing the canola seed out the back. Typically we're allowed quite a bit of dockage with canola. It's not a true discount, but they just subtract the weight from the dockage material from your canola weight, so leaving your sample a little bit trashy if you have the luxury of keeping it with below that 10% moisture. But if we have a lot of green material out there, a lot of green regrowth, we're going to have to try to clean that seed with the combine pretty heavily to get it under that 10% moisture.
Now, what about guys, if they still want to get out there and swath the crop, is there time?
There is still some time. Some guys that are going late at night, early in the morning, if we have a dew on, that little bit of extra moisture, that humidity. With these rains, a lot of guys are fighting humidity right now. That keeps those pods a little bit more tough. They don't shatter as much. I know this producer's got a little bit left and they're going to wait till in the morning where we have a little bit of dew. Some guys, if they have some really ripe seed and some of that later stuff is still a little bit green, if you have a tall enough crop, take more stem with the swath. Typically we're going just below the pods, but if you take a little bit more stem, that's a little bit more moisture to finish out those green pods. So if they're able to still get in their swath without shattering too much, running late at night or early in the morning is their next best bet. But once you start seeing too much of the inside of the pod, that white, if you're seeing a lot of white, you know it's about time to put the swather away.
All right. Now what about insect pressure this year? Are we seeing much right now?
This year has been fairly gracious to us as far as insect pressure. Here closer to harvest, we did find a new issue come up this year, the harlequin bug. It's kind of a plant bug. We don't know too much about it, how much damage it really did. Some stems, you can tell they kind of drew down and drew some of that moisture out of that raceme and kind of limited what the seed set was. But for the most part, we don't know how much damage they caused, but typically we don't see that many of them, but this year we saw a lot of them for some reason.
All right, thanks for the update. Josh Bashong, canola specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
Joining us now is Ron Scholler, Executive Director of the Oklahoma Oilseed Commission. And Ron, as we just heard from Josh, it's definitely been a year of challenges for canola producers, but the canola season didn't really start out that way last fall.
No, it didn't. We actually started off in pretty good shape. We had some moisture in the fall. We haven't had that every year, but 2013 was, we got off to a great start. We had some late planted canola that didn't fare as well, but the bulk of the crop got off to a great start. We went into the winter, and everyone knows the story of this winter. It was particularly harsh. We did have a little bit of stand loss over the winter, but still coming out of that, we looked very good, and we thought we were poised for an excellent crop. We had good stands, and then everything went dry. And most of our canola areas, most of the counties where we grow the canola, they've actually had less than one half, maybe 1/3 to 1/2 of their normal rainfall from January through April. And that just really took a toll on the crop. And so we're seeing that now as the crop is being harvested, the impact of that.
And in terms of what that means for the industry, can you give us some perspective on that overall?
Yeah, it's been a steep learning curve. These conditions of this year, 2013 and 2014, are certainly not unprecedented, but they are uncommon. And so as we visit with the growers, they're still optimistic about the crop. The crop has some drought tolerance, but nothing is going to fare well under the conditions that we've had. The crop has held up about as well as the wheat, but then again, that's much poorer than we would like for it to. But we just didn't have the rainfall. And so we're going to see our yields are not going to be where they need to be. But we selected this crop to rotate with wheat because it does have drought tolerance. It does fare well here in Oklahoma and the southern Great Plains. And we believe that this year is an abnormal situation and that we'll return hopefully to some more normal conditions. So our growers, they're still committed to this crop. It's been a steep learning curve. We went from about 40,000 acres of canola in 2008 to 300,000 acres planted in last fall, and so that's such a positive indicator of what they think about the crop, and they're still enthused about the crop despite these very poor conditions. So we think we're still on track to, we are firmly committed to this crop and the growth of the crop here in Oklahoma and the Southern Great Plains.
Obviously, lots of benefits of canola, or there wouldn't be that many people expanding their acreage.
Exactly. We're a state and a region that's committed to hard red winter wheat for a reason. It best suits our weather conditions, but canola matches up well with those weather conditions also. And it's such an incredibly great crop to rotate with wheat. And growers are coming to understand that. What we planted last fall is a clear indication of that, and we know they're still committed to this crop, and we'll still see the growth that we have planned.
Okay, good perspective. Ron Scholler, the Executive Director of the Oklahoma Oilseed Commission. Thank
Thanks.
you.
One of the real advantages, I think, to fall calving is to have the option of leaving the calves with the cows until they're 9, maybe even close to 10 months of age. That way they're older and heavier at weaning time, and we can market a heavier calf. But that also means that it's likely that we're going to be weaning those calves during hot summer months. The extra heat, of course, adds additional stress to that weaning process. We can reduce some of that stress by a management practice we call fence line weaning. And that's just the situation, of course, where the calves are weaned from the cows with only a fence in between them so that they can see the mother, hear the mother, but of course don't have access to them. California did some research on comparing fence line weaning to where the calves were completely weaned separately, where they were out of sight, out of mind from the mother cows. They followed those calves in terms of their behavior for about the first week and found that those calves that were fence line weaned walked less, bawled less, and ate a little bit more in the first 2 to 3 days after the weaning took place. Therefore, they got off to a little better start. As they looked at the weight change, the calves that were fence line weaned gained 23 more pounds than did their counterparts that were completely separated in the first 2 weeks. And that weight advantage was maintained through 10 weeks' time when those fence line weaned calves weighed 26 pounds more than their counterparts did. As we're considering this low stress management practice of fence line weaning, we've got to remember to have adequate water on both sides of the fence. Water that is available for those calves to be able to reach so that they can get enough to drink during the hot summer months of weaning those fall-born calves. Consider fence line weaning this year for your fall-born calves. I think you'll end up with a healthier calf, a little heavier calf to market, and therefore should bring just a few more dollars in this real good calf market. Hey, we look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
Harvest is well underway here in southern Oklahoma, but unfortunately the best wheat we've seen here in Cotton County is in these test plots.
In this county, most of the fields west of I-44 anyway don't look quite this good, and the farther west you go the worse it gets because they just didn't get rainfall. And they never had the yield potential before the freeze. Then after the freeze, what they had was gone. So most of that wheat was grazed out or baled off.
The freeze he is referring to occurred on April 15th. With temperatures hitting right at the critical point that morning, fields like this one at the top of a hill survived. Many in valleys did not. Yet those that did were still limited by drought.
We're just thankful to have a combine here today. We're averaging around 20 right now. We're about 50% cut. We didn't disaster any of our wheat, so we feel like that we've done fairly well for the year. Our high so far has been around 25 bushels, and I cut some the other day for 4. So it's wide variance.
You know, we've got some pretty sorry wheat. Some of it's making as low as 4 bushels.
Charlie Swanson is the manager of Co-op Services in Lawton, Oklahoma, with branches in Chattanooga and Granfield.
You know, we're just extremely proud to be able to take in 300,000 or 400,000 bushels, which is about 15-20% of an average crop. Chattanooga will You know, they generally handle 1 million bushels, and they're going to take 200,000 bushels. Granfield's about the same way. They generally have taken 1 million bushels at that location or more, and they've taken in a little over 100,000 bushels already, and I hope they get another 100,000.
That is not to say that it is all bad news. Back at the test plots, we asked Extension small grain specialist Jeff Edwards for his early impressions on quality.
Surprising. You know, now at this location we've had a little more moisture, but given the amount of drought that we've had and everything, I would expect the kernels to be more shriveled than what they are. They're not huge by any standards, but they are a decent size, and we should have decent milling and baking quality out of these kernels and a decent test weight. So pleasantly surprised. We'll see if this continues as we move northward and westward, where the drought maybe hit us a little harder.
We thought we might have some problems with quality, but we've had good test weights, most of it above 60 pounds. And also we're getting reports back that the protein's good, so we can't complain about the quality. We just need to worry about the quantity at this point.
And that quantity will have an effect not just on the farmer, but on the communities built around this enterprise.
In an average year, when we make a profit, we improve our infrastructure, maybe buy some fertilizer type of equipment and work on the grain elevators or build new elevators. And this year, we're not going to be able to do any of that. It's going to be kind of a tighten your old belt buckle and hope that 2015 hurry up and get here.
My father said if you never thought it was going to rain, you're probably in the wrong business. So you just turn around and the next crop's always going to be better. You know, you got to step up the plate and swing. You know, if you don't step up the plate and swing, you're not going to get on base even. So we're going to keep swinging.
In Cotton County, waiting on the next at-bat, I'm Austin Moore.
Well, and actually staying with that baseball theme, Kim, let's talk about what the next inning would be for the marketing season.
Well, once the wheat's in the bin, then you got to market it, or you got to sell it. Of course, there's the old standby, third and a third at harvest, third September, October, final third November Dece. You stagger it over the market, you take an average price. Producers that need the money, that can afford a lower price, then I think they should sell a higher percentage at harvest. You could always sell it at harvest and buy call option contracts. There's several strategies you can look at. It's important, though, to have a written marketing strategy before you get up to bat.
Okay, let's talk about this. December, the end of December is a long time away. Price could actually do a lot of things. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, that's hard to call because the U.S. wheat crop is only going to be about 7.7% of the world's wheat crop. We're going to export less than 20% of the world's exports. And you can remember, go back 15, 20 years ago, we were exporting 30, 40%. So what we're looking at there, with the foreign crops coming in the August-September time period, if those come in above expectations, we could see price at this level or lower. If we get a short crop somewhere, then we could see prices with the tight stocks in the U.S., we could see prices increase dramatically and get back up to that $7.50, $7.60. So I'm looking at a spread between about $6.50 and maybe $7.50, $7.60.
Okay, you alluded to the Kim Anderson patented third. Of those three, which one would you recommend?
Well, that's going to depend on my financial position and the risk that I can afford to take. Given that the price is going to depend on foreign crops, I think if I've got to have the funds, I'm going to go ahead and sell my crop. It's going to cost me 40 or 50 cents if I come in with options, something like that. But I'm probably going to sell at least half of it if I can't afford the risk. But you know me, I like to sell a third now, a third September, October, the final third November Dece.
Okay, one last question. Looking into your crystal ball, let's talk about June 2015. What do you think the world will be like?
I think our prices will be relatively good. Our average price is around $6.50. I think we'll be there or higher because U.S. stocks are tight now and they're going to get tighter as we get into that 14-15 marketing year. So I see prices average or better.
Okay, Kim Anderson, grain marketing specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
Hi, I'm Al Sutherland with your Mesonet weather report. Are you wet yet? If not, chances are you soon will be. Wednesday was a good reminder of what summer heat in Oklahoma is like. Granfield topped out at 107 degrees. 12 Mesonet sites hit 100 or more. Wednesday's heat also pushed up soil temperatures. On a map of bare soil temperatures at 4 inches at 6 p.m. Wednesday, it was surprising how high the temperatures were across the state. Lots of 90-plus temperatures, with Mangum at 103. That's hot for a soil temperature 4 inches below the surface in early June. Under vegetation, the 4-inch soil temperature for Mangum was 11 degrees cooler, 92. This really points to how a layer of organic mulch cools Oklahoma's summer soils. Another aspect of Oklahoma's summer heat is how it puts an added stress on livestock. A cattle comfort map from 4:25 p.m. Wednesday had 33 Mesonet sites at 100 or above on the cattle comfort index values. These sites were scattered across Oklahoma from east to west and south to north. Granfield and Woodward were at 106. Here's Gary with the latest on Oklahoma's official drought levels.
Thanks, Al, and good morning, everybody. We've certainly had some great rains over the last couple of weeks, so let's take a look at the drought monitor and see how things have changed. Well, we did see some nice drought reductions across northern Oklahoma, including the central panhandle, and also down in southwestern Oklahoma. But at the same time, we saw increases in drought across southern Oklahoma up into central Oklahoma. Take a look at this Mesonet rainfall map for May. We had a high rainfall total of 7.65 inches down at Mount Herman, and in southeastern Oklahoma, they generally got from 5 to 7 inches of rainfall. But we also had a low of 0.51 inches in Freedom in northwestern Oklahoma, where we had some of the lowest totals. The statewide average for May was 3.06 inches, which sounds good, but that's still 2.15 inches below normal. And that's also the 28th driest May since records began in 1895. The May percent of normal map from the Mesonet shows where there were abundant rains, and we can see that down in the southwest, out in the panhandle, and then scattered about southeastern Oklahoma, but also where most of the state actually went without good rains. Now, the state was also mostly warmer than normal for much of the area. Officially, it was 1.2 degrees above normal, or the 39th warmest May since 1895. That's also the first month since last fall that we've seen above normal temperatures at the end of the month. So it's been a while since we've had a warmer than normal month. Now, this departure from normal temperature map from the Mesonet shows that northwestern Oklahoma, where those drought conditions really started to blossom during May. So again, we're expecting big rains this weekend. Hopefully we can improve that drought map even more across more areas, especially down in southern Oklahoma, where drought's really starting to take off once again. That's it for this week. We'll see you next week on the Mesonet Weather Report.
We've seen how the long-term drought is impacting crops, but there's something else to tell you about. We're shaping up to see a lot of grasshoppers this summer.
We had an extended fall with extended egg lay of any surviving grasshoppers. We've typically had very dry, warm springs, which also favors survival of the eggs that are laid in the ground. So in pockets around the state, we are seeing, pretty heavy grasshopper populations.
OSU Extension entomologist Tom Royer uses a sweep net, not to count grasshopper populations, but to check for individual size.
We really want to have you focus on controlling grasshoppers, especially if you're going to use a product like Dimilin, when they're anywhere from a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch long, and they're still pretty small, because Dimilin affects the molting process of the grasshoppers. So you want to make sure you catch them when they're in that stage. But the key is get them when they're little, between now and July 1st, before they sprout wings and they start moving around. They're much bigger, they're much harder to kill by that time.
Once the insects reach a saturation of 20 per square yard in a pasture setting, Royer looks at control methods.
One of the things to keep in mind is that grasshoppers will eat 50% of their body weight every day in forage. When you compare that to a cow, they'll eat 1.5 to 2% of their body weight a day. So you can basically think of 30 pounds of grasshoppers being equivalent to, say, a 350 to 600 pound steer in terms of the amount of forage they're going to eat in a day. So they can, high populations can cause real problems in a pasture. We do have a system called the Reduced Agent and Area Treatment that we call RAT, that allows you to strip spray a field with a product like Dimilin or maybe Prevathon, where you can apply a low rate, spread it on 50% of your pasture, and you're taking advantage of a grasshopper's tendency to migrate around and feed in different areas. And you can probably reduce populations by 80 to 85%, and you're only using 50% of the insecticide you'd use if you sprayed the whole field.
And row crops are threatened by grasshoppers too, especially soybeans and corn.
One of the things you can do right now is if you have a field of a summer crop, look around the bar ditches and the roadside ditches and see if you have any grasshoppers hatching in those areas. Typically they will be concentrated in those areas of the next to the field. And you can sometimes go ahead and spot spray or just spray the road ditches and knock down grasshopper populations so they won't start migrating into your field. But again, the best time to catch them is when they're small and coming out of their hatching areas before they spread out all the way through your field and you have to spray the whole field.
For more information on grasshoppers and control methods, look for fact sheets in the links section of our website, sunup.okstate.edu. That'll do it for us this week. Remember, you can find us anytime on our website, sunup.okstate.edu. You can also follow us on YouTube and other social media. Best of luck with harvest, everyone, and we'll see you next time at SUNUP.